A bunch of union bartenders like, hold on, we got to squeeze limes a la Matute into our margaritas? Nah. Until they did it, and they got the response from the guests, and they saw how well received fresh cocktails were.
Welcome back for another week. Today I am talking to a world-class bartender, Tony Abou-Ganim. If you are not familiar with Tony, Tony is the world-renowned creator of the cable car, which is actually celebrating its 30th anniversary. He's a published author. He's the author of Vodka Distilled and The Modern Mixologist. He goes by The Modern Mixologist online. He also ran the Bellagio in its heyday, so this man has a lot of experience. He is really big in the world of the USBG. He does some great fundraising things with the Helen David Relief Fund, and we get to talk about all of it. Just me, him, and his 4 dogs. So you will hear a little bit of excitement from his furry friends here and there. Just a heads up. Fascinating man. I could not even imagine where the bar world would be without Tony. So without any further ado, here's Tony, and thank you for listening to Who Serves You Right. Why don't we just start before we end up talking all day without recording any of it? Tony, thank you for coming on Serves You Right. It's really a pleasure.
Hi, Andrew. It's my pleasure to be here and talk about one of my favorite subjects, bartending and bartenders and cocktails.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that we get to talk today, because before we started filming, you did mention that it's the 30th anniversary of the cable car, your modern classic, which is really fantastic.
Yeah, Andrew, if you think about it, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot of cocktail creation taking place.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, the drink like a Cosmopolitan or a Lemon Drop popped up, but there wasn't like it is today, where any decent bar you go into is going to present you with a cocktail menu, and it's going to be a host of original house cocktails. Back then, I was just trying to be consistent with classics, and really the lost and forgotten classics. I never saw an aviation on the menu, and somehow I had read about the Brandy Crusta, and when Captain Morgan Spice Rum, that was the only spice rum there really was then. Bacardi played around in the market, but they were the big player, and they came and said, Tony, would you create an original drink using Captain Morgan? And I like to quote Mencken. He said, there'll never again be a totally original cocktail, just variations on classics that have come before it. And that was the inspiration for the cable car, was the Brandy Crusta. And little did I know, 30 years ago, that it would gain the popularity that it has today. And just a funny story, the Super Bowl this year was held in San Francisco. And I work with a gentleman who orchestrates a lot of the food and beverage events. And he said at all their events, the number one requested drink was the cable car.
Yeah.
I was just flattered to death, but.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. No, I mean, since we started off there, I think it'd be cool to celebrate you a little bit. In your journey, you kind of have gone full circle, I would almost say. You started one place and you've ended up back in that same place. So, yeah, would you tell us a little bit about what you have just been doing this last couple of years with Brass Rail?
Yeah, Andrew, born and raised in Port Huron, Michigan, and my cousin Helen David opened.
You've trained them to bark at Helen David. That's awesome.
I've got four dogs here at the house. I tried to get them as neutral as possible. Should have gave them some doggy downers. But yeah, my cousin Helen and her mother opened the Brass Rail Bar in 1937. Now, if you think about that, Andrew, it wasn't even legal for women to tend bar in Michigan until 1945, unless you were the wife or the daughter of the proprietor. So for 2 women to open a bar in 1937 was quite an amazing feat. They had inherited an ice cream parlor that their father, or Helen's father, opened in 1919. And it was called the Hy-Vee Sweet Shop. And it was the Great Depression, and people weren't eating ice cream Sundays. But people always seemed to have a little extra money for a drink. And in June 15th, 1937, her and her mother opened the Brass Rail Bar. I poured my first drink there under the watchful eye of Helen and my Uncle Charlie and my cousin Tony in 1980. So yeah, it's going to be 46 years later, kind of like the Olympic hockey team.
Yeah, there you go.
46 years later that I go back and pour my second drink. But when my cousin Maroon passed, who had inherited the bar got sold out of the family for a couple of years, and it came available, and I was like, I can't not keep this heritage, alive. I mean, it means so much to Port Huron, Michigan. Obviously, it means so much to me and my family. So I was able, along with my partner Jimmy Raditz, to buy it back, renovating it right now. We hope to open June 15th of 2026, which would be 89 years to the day that Helen first opened it.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, I can't wait to make you a cocktail there. The back bar came out of an old hotel in Michigan that Helen's father, Tony Abou-Ganim, who, in a very weird story I'm named after, which is also kind of crazy, bought from the proprietor when they went out of business, had it installed in the sweet shop, and it's been there over 100 years, but it came from Italy over 200 years ago, and it's just the most beautiful back bar I've ever seen.
I want to take you back to that moment when you poured your first drink. Did you feel like you had found your calling? How did you take to the beginning of the bar? I'm just curious.
Okay, so I have a drink that I prepared today that I want to share with you. And it was inspired by, I was asked the other day, we're doing a film about Helen and the history and the resurrection of the brass rail and kind of bringing it back to Brass Rail 2.0. Did you ever see the film The Russian Five about the Detroit Red Wings?
No. Yeah, tell me about it.
It celebrated that time when the Red Wings were winning Stanley Cups, and they were one of the first to be able to bring Russian players to the United States. So the people that produced and directed that film reached out to me and said, we've heard about the brass rail, this has to be documented. So we've been working on a film that is going to be a full-length film about the brass rail and its resurgence. But the director asked me, he said, Tony, what was the one drink that inspired you to become a bartender? And it was in 1978. The drinking age then in Michigan was 18. And my mom and dad took me out to dinner and then cocktails at the Brass Rail. And my cousin Tony was behind the bar, so he lined up for me in my honor of my 18th birthday all the classics. Did a sidecar, a Tom Collins in the frosted glass, an old fashioned, and a Manhattan. I don't know exactly what it was, Andrew, but that Manhattan really, it just stuck with me. It resonated. It just brought the whole thing together. And I'll never forget that moment. So what I have today is a riff on a barrel-aged Manhattan, but also using vermouth and Averna, and substituting Angostura bitters for some of these Tony Abou-Ganim Chicory Pecan bitters.
Of course, yes.
World famous, but it was funny. Dale DeGroff once said, he said, I don't know what I was thinking. I was going to get rich one drop at a time.
Yes.
So, but they work really beautifully, with rye whiskey. And this is, again, inspired by that Manhattan that really made me fall in love with bartending. Because you can imagine, as a kid, I went into the Brass Rail when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And my Uncle Charlie was behind the bar, and I was always in such awe of the bar and of my uncle. I would get a Shirley Temple for putting all the empty beer bottles back in the cases. So that was, I guess, my first bar gig at about 6 years of age. But then when I was able to legally drink at the Brass Rail, that's, I guess, when that light bulb went off. It took a couple years after that, and my dad had to convince Helen to make me a bartender. She wanted to send me to culinary school to be a chef, because in 1980, being a bartender wasn't like it is today. It wasn't that profession that you wanted your kids to aspire to. Charlie, come on. And then I just finished it with a couple. Do you know these Filthy Cherries from Filthy Daniel?
Yeah. They're awesome.
Dear friend of mine, and I've been working with him and trying to, since he was selling olives out of the back of his wife's minivan in Miami. So this will be a featured drink at the Brass Rail, out of the barrel, in memory, I guess, of that first Manhattan in 1978. Cheers.
Cheers. I do have to backtrack a little bit just because I don't know if I was a little mesmerized if someone's just listening. So I saw Tony take the base of what he stirred from a barrel he brought with him. So he's got a little barrel aging to his left there. I guess you're right. So yeah, how long did you age that? And like, what is that contraption?
Well, I was always kind of hesitant of the idea of barrel aging. When we opened Libertine Social at Mandalay Bay here in Las Vegas, I tried a couple of drinks, including the Negroni, and I just loved the way it brought the drink together, how it made those three ingredients harmonize and become almost one ingredient that was so complex. And it made sense then, because I'm a firm believer, Andrew, if it improves the overall cocktail, let's do it. If smoking a Manhattan or an old-fashioned improves the drink, great, let's do it. If we're doing it just to do it for the smoke and mirrors.
For Instagram, yeah.
For Instagram. I've got a great story about that. So I actually don't tell anyone, but I had like 4 bottles of bourbon that were about half finished. So I blended those all together. I used Antica formula and I used a Verna. And I didn't put the bitters in until the end. And it's been in there about 6 weeks now. And I think it's just about where it needs to be, because in such a small barrel, and that was the first fill on that barrel, you leave it too long and it can almost go the other way. So it tastes delicious. I wish I could share it with you, but
no, there will be a day soon enough. Yeah, that is one thing I've found with barrel aged cocktails, because you forget, you see the like whiskey barrels and they're huge, and right. I mean there are bigger ones. The rate of like the volume of the liquid to the area inside the barrel as it gets small gets way big. So yeah, it's very quickly to really unbalance that. I was going to ask, is there a reason you didn't add the bitters until you burned it? Is it just easy to overpower it, or?
Well, in all the research that I did leading up to it, actually putting it in the barrel, pretty much everything I read led you to believe that when you add bitters and then let them age in the barrel with the drink, that they bloom and they expand. So what would be the perfect amount of bitters now is liable to overwhelm the drink. So I've never really tried it, so I can't speak for sure. But, to waste 5 liters on a chance, I'd rather just add it.
That's an expensive experiment for sure.
Plus, it gives me the opportunity to show off my bottle of bitters.
Yeah, and I mean you've gotta sell the bitters. That's the main thing.
One drop at a time.
Well, that's awesome. I think that a lot of people that got serious in the bar, the Manhattan was their entry point too, because that was one of my first favorites, because I've always been more spirits heavy. It was something, it was easy. I could remember it, especially when I was having to memorize all these new recipes. It is delicious, and add to that is easy to get the ingredients at a store when I was in college.
Classics for a reason. When I started at the Brass Rail, that's really what you had. You had classic cocktails. It was a neighborhood bar right on the Sarnia-Ontario border, so a lot of Canadian whiskey, a lot of Canadian business. But it was old-fashions, it was Manhattans, it was martinis. I didn't discover a Negroni until much later. We take the Negroni for granted today, but when I discovered it in 1991, quite by accident, I was working at opening Harry Denton's on Stewart Street in San Francisco, and we had a great general manager, David O'Malley. Again, you didn't really have a cocktail menu then, Andrew, but he had a placemat, and he wanted to put 4 classics, and it was a sidecar, it was an old-fashioned, I think it was a French 75, and this thing called a Negroni. I was like, what the heck is a Negroni? Campari. So we did a tasting, and I'll deny this fact, because the Negroni is my favorite cocktail today, but I spit it out. I was like, is it supposed to taste like this? I think it's turned the corner. I think it's bad. But they say that even the Italians have to try a Negroni 3 times before they fall in love with it. So
sure, yeah.
Stuck with it, and thank God I did.
No, that is funny. And it is something that you forget growing up and as your taste matures, because, just like, you have to get used to bitter. And I'm also thinking, like, the first time I ever tried mezcal, I'm pretty sure I was like, this is gross. I don't know what you guys are doing. And now, like, I will drink mezcal over most things. Just, yeah, but...
Well, if you were anything like me with your first experience with mezcal, it was the stuff on a border town that had a little bag of salt and dried grub in it, and the grub in the bottle, and it was terrible. And the thing was, it was at bachelor parties or, birthday, and the big celebration, whoever had the last shot ate the worm.
Yeah.
And usually brought the worm back up. But we didn't have the Ron Cooper, thank God for Ron, bringing mezcal, real mezcal, single village mezcal, Atisi mezcals into the United States. I remember Steve Olson brought Ron in to the Bellagio when we first opened, 98, 99. He said, Ron's got these beautiful mezcals that he's importing, and I think they'd be perfect at the Bellagio. And I was expecting, Andrew, that experience that I had at the
gimmick
border.
Yeah.
And I tasted these and I said, wow, this is amazing. This is so much different. So we brought it into all the bars, and those bottles sat there for years. Because no one had any idea. So thank God for Ron and Steve Olson and Jimmy Yeager for spreading the gospel and really making us the ambassadors to mezcal, understanding mezcal, and spreading the love, because otherwise you would not have the beautiful mezcals we have today to drink.
Yeah, it's true. And it is growing now to the point where it's almost being problematic with them keeping up production. But when it started, it was growing like crazy 200-300% a year. But it was like, that means 10 people to 30 people drinking it. It is nice that there are actually some numbers accumulating now. I do want to make sure we talk about the Bellagio and all this, but I want us to kind of roughly sketch out where you worked, kind of your trajectory, if we can. So after the Brass Rail, where did you find yourself going?
Well, I moved to California.
Okay.
And I was going there to be an actor, but my best friend, we were going to live in Los Angeles, got transferred last minute to San Francisco. He said, it's great up here. Why don't you come up to San Francisco? If you don't like it, you can always go down to LA. And I never left San Francisco, got involved in theater, started working for a lot of great operators. I worked for Boss Skaggs at the Blue Light Cafe. I worked for Jack Slick at the Balboa Cafe. People that were kind of ahead of their time were doing fresh juices. Doug Biederbeck at Bix. I never worked for Doug, but was very inspired by what he was doing at Bix. Still love Bix. If you've never been, that's a must stop. And then met Harry Denton. Got to open Harry Denton's on Stewart Street in 1991, and then opened the Starlight Room in 1995. And that's where in 1998 Steve Wynn kind of tracked me down. And at that time, there weren't a lot of people doing programs like that weren't out there preaching fresh cocktails and resurrecting lost and forgotten classics. Dale DeGroff, obviously the godfather at the Rainbow Room in New York, was the person who inspired me when I first met him in 1993, that this is a career, not just a part-time gig while you're working on your acting career. And he was actually the cat that referred me to Steve Wynn's folks, to George Goldhoff at the Bellagio. He said, I can't go. I can't leave New York and go to
I'm busy here, yeah.
I'm a little busy here. Plus, I'm settled and I've got a wife. But there's this guy in San Francisco who's doing some cool stuff. You should call him. So it was Dale that recommended me for the Bellagio job, which really changed the direction of my career. I thought it was the craziest thing in the world. I'm going to leave San Francisco. I got a great life. I got a great gig. I'm doing theater, riding my motorcycle. Moved to Las Vegas, and then I saw the Bellagio and the opportunity, and it was my best friend again who said, you have to do this. This is going to be the greatest stage for you to preach, the message. And it was just implementing on this slightly larger scale, 29 bars, 320 bartenders, that we were doing at the Starlight Room in San Francisco. Fresh cocktails, premium spirits, good ice, good glass, nice garnish, nothing esoteric or crazy. And you can imagine, Andrew, a bunch of union bartenders like, hold on, we got to squeeze limes into our margaritas? Nah. Until they did it, and they got the response from the guests, and they saw how well received fresh cocktails were. And it was a wonderful time. It was one of those things that happened organically. I don't know that we could ever recreate that moment, but in part it's led, because it was such a big stage, to what we are experiencing nationwide today. Because it was hard in 1998 to find a fresh, well-crafted cocktail anywhere. I mean, there were pockets, sure, San Francisco, New York, New Orleans, but not like it is, not even close. I had no idea that today the cocktail would be as revered and the profession of bartender would be as, as accepted or as revered as it is today.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, unless you do your homework, I feel like it is still hard to just by chance find well-crafted cocktails sometimes. I have definitely succumbed to a couple of concoctions that have been a little bit sweeter than I expected, but fresh for sure. That idea of using fresh juices and things and making sure you have quality, that definitely did take off. And even in some of those smaller places, you still see, maybe they squeezed it in the morning, but you still see something.
Yes.
So it is wild how much things have changed in 30 years. For sure.
But let me ask you a question. I know you're running the interview, but what are you seeing? Obviously, you're quite a bit younger than I am, but with the younger drinker and their understanding, appreciation, and celebration of cocktails, and I mean, the bar was always. We took out all the televisions at the Brass Rail. We're going to have one projector screen because, if the Red Wings are playing or the Lions are playing. But I want people to talk to one another. I want people to interact. I want people to socialize. And it seems like today, everything's on your phone. Everything's on a tablet. You're not going out. And I don't know if this is in part, a response to COVID, if it's a generational thing. I'm sure my parents said the same thing about my generation, but I'm a little worried. I mean, I read the Mark Brown column every day, and just to see what is happening in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are like 3 or 4 different ways you can look at that, I think. I think one that I think that we don't really think about its impact, but I do think it's there, is the rise in medical marijuana. Because I think a lot of people will find some way to escape or deal with a tough day. For so long, the default has been maybe meet up with friends at a bar, like maybe go over to a friend's house for a cocktail. But as we have legalized marijuana, I think the options have diversified. And I also think a lot of people, just for housing costs, live further away from where they work. And so there is a sense in which if you have to drive 20 minutes home, it is a little irresponsible to have more than 1 or 2, It's easier to go home and light up a joint, so there are a lot of pressures there. I do think you have a point with the smartphone, and it's something I've noticed and seen. Even at bars, when people come in alone, I remember when I started bartending, I would see people, because it was at that Secreto bar in Santa Fe, you would see people chat to each other, and you'd see them talk, and you'd see them meet each other. And more and more, the longer I've been in it, I see more people. I've even seen people with laptops at the bars. You're like locked in. And I think there's this fear of in real time communication just because it's too unpredictable. Like a lot of the younger generation likes the text because you can think about it and it's not immediate. You don't have to be right there. And, if you get out of practice with it, it just gets more and more risky and it feels like it's a challenge. Yeah, I don't know. And then there are a lot of people and a lot of pressures about drinking less and thinking about things. So there's the sober and low movements, and people are definitely drinking a little bit less these days.
And one thing you didn't mention was the cost of going out and drinking.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know at your establishments what the average price is, but Las Vegas, $20 cocktail is kind of the jumping in point now. And, I'm at a point in my life where I can afford that. But when, I was in my early 20s, I think $20, that was my beer money for the week. That was not a single cocktail. I do the drinks for the Vegas Golden Knights. And I also do the drinks up at Lumen Field in Seattle, which now means that my drinks have been responsible for a Stanley Cup and a Super Bowl.
There you go. Yeah.
I always attribute the drinks, but it's a round of drinks for 4 people is $100 bill. Mm-hmm. It's just so what we're doing at the Brass Rail, Andrew, which this is going to be a program and a project that it's not designed to necessarily be financially profitable, which probably means it will be. My dad always said, if you just do what you love doing, the money will take care of itself. But I said, I want to create a New York style, London style, Paris style bar in Port Huron, Michigan, with Port Huron prices and a Port Huron vibe. So I'm curating all the music. It's going to be all 70s Motown, little scattering of disco, and the drink menu will be priced at $9 to $11, which you'll get a $20+ cocktail for $9 to $11. But I don't think people in Port Huron would ever pay $20 for a cocktail, nor should we need to. I mean, I know everything's gotten more expensive. I don't think booze has gotten that much more expensive. But labor, rent, insurance, all of those things have gotten more expensive. But I think you can create that environment and that experience and let people come out and enjoy it without it being a once a month or 5 times a year, whatever it is, experience. I want to bring back that regular customer. I want people to have their table. I want people to interact with one another. I want the staff to know everybody. Because cocktails are great, Andrew, but a great bar is about hospitality. It's about making people feel wanted, make them feel special, make them feel, at home away from home. Ellen always said, the Brass Rail is an extension of my living room, and I treat my customers like I would guests in my home. And I live by that motto and will continue to live by that motto. And like I said, if I had to worry about paying my mortgage out of the Brass Rail, I never would have done it. I'm kind of in a position where I'll get to do exactly what I want to do. It might not be for everybody, but it'll be a different experience, an experience I'll be very proud to offer to the people that live in Port Huron, the people that'll visit. And at the end of the day, if we can put smiles on faces and make people's day a little bit better, I think we've accomplished our goal.
Yeah. The way you're talking about the bar made me think that, before this renaissance, when cocktails weren't all fresh ingredients, when it maybe wasn't such an elevated art, the bars still existed and did well. There's a reason the Brass Rail opened. Even with maybe not the elevated cocktails, they still made people feel welcome. They still took care of people. And we've added in good cocktails, but you can't subtract out the other element too. And although some quarters of mixology definitely are aiming at that, you definitely have to have the guests front and center too. So
you're absolutely right. And when this whole kind of craft cocktail bar mixology thing took off, it took off a little quick. There's a great, I can't remember who said it, Einstein, I believe, said it, the only way to gain knowledge is through experience. So now all of a sudden you've got this really cool thing happening, but you have a lot of young bartenders who maybe don't have the experience in the profession to have that knowledge. But yet they're revered for being mixologists, and maybe they got a little pretentious, maybe got a little arrogant at the bar. I don't care how good the drink is. If you don't make me feel welcome, if you don't make me feel like this is a place I want to be at, I'm probably not coming back. And I'll tell you a little story. I see you have a copy of Vodka Distilled right behind you.
I do. Before your story, I was going to have Modern Mixologist too, but my books have a habit of evaporating. Usually that means I loaned it to someone and I didn't get it back. So I couldn't find it, which is actually probably a good sign. I mean, there's another bartender out there with it, but you have it for me.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm a firm believer that this is a profession of giving back. This is a profession of being a mentor. We are here to inspire the next generation, to educate the next generation. I have a saying, Andrew, that I want to be better today than I was yesterday. I've been doing this 46 years, and I'm still learning every day. There's so much to know, so many different things to taste, if you ever think you know it all, stop doing it, because you don't. I mean, there is so much to know, and that's what keeps me, excited. That keeps me passionate about the profession. Is I know I'm going to be better today than I was yesterday. So what I'm going to do, Andrew, is I'm going to send you like 6 books so that you can have one for yourself and 5 to give away, because that's the thing. I can't send you 6 vodka distilled because that is a collector's item now. So don't give that one away. They're out of print.
Actually, it's signed. So I had to hold on to it. It says, "Can't wait to have one of your cocktails, Tony Abou-Ganim." So, how about that?
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Yeah.
So the story I was going to tell, and thank you for a segue, but when I was writing the book, I went everywhere. I went to Finland, I went to Russia twice, I went to Sweden, I went to Tito's in Austin, who is a dear friend, because I really wanted to just understand vodka. I got so upset with how our industry was looking at the vodka category. It was kind of like turning their nose up at it. Now, I understand to a point why. Because when you look back at classic cocktails, there weren't many vodka-based drinks. In the Savoy Cocktail Book, which was written by an American bartender displaced by Prohibition, Harry Craddock, who was working at the Savoy in London. In 1930, the book came out. There were over 300 gin-based cocktails in that book. Andrew, do you know how many vodka-based cocktails there were in that book?
You're holding up these many, so I'm thinking 2.
Only 2 vodka-based drinks in that book. So I kind of get it when you think about resurrecting classic, lost and forgotten, pre-prohibition cocktails. Vodka didn't exist in this country, but yet today, 25% of all the cocktails or all the spirit drank in the United States is vodka. So why turn your nose up at it? Why not embrace it and celebrate it and try to understand it better? I think it was Charlotte Voicey, dear friend Charlotte, who said, "Through deeper understanding comes greater enjoyment." I wish I would have said that. I love that quote.
She beat you to it, yeah.
She beat me to it. And I always give her credit for it because I feel like, in all of this, there are people that contribute so much. But I'm getting off track. So I'm writing the book. I'm in Oakland, California. I hear about this cocktail bar. I have to go. So I go in, I sit at the bar. They don't know who I am, not that it matters, or why I'm there. I'm a paying customer. I sit at the bar. I look at their cocktail menu. Again, so esoteric, I understand most of the ingredients the guys use. I see him behind the bar. He's probably 28, 29, which is fine. I mean, I love that he embraced being a bartender. And I look at the back bar. I don't see a bottle of vodka anywhere. So I asked him, I said, I'd really love a vodka cocktail. You do serve vodka here, right? He said, "We have 2 vodkas here. And in my opinion, that's too many." And I was just like, are we not in the hospitality industry? You just so offended me as a paying customer. The next thing I asked for was the check. Because, I want to be in a place, hey, we're really all about gin, but we do have some vodka. I can make you something great. No. He totally offended me about me asking about vodka. Hey, I love every spirit. I celebrate every spirit. But the motivation behind writing that book was the misunderstanding and the perception of vodka in this country. Take that for what it's worth, but I'm proud of the book. And it's nice to see people continuing to, enjoy vodka and hopefully understanding it better.
No, I mean, you've got a point. It's not necessarily celebrated, but you know what it's reminding me of? So I pivoted in my bartending career, ended up in management, and went down the wine study route, did the somm thing. It reminds me of Caymus. And, people in the wine industry have a certain opinion of Caymus. It's mass-produced. It's maybe overpriced, blah. I have that by the glass because, that helps pay the bills. People love it. And you know what? That allows us to have our 1 or 2 strange biodynamic bottles that we tell people about ourselves. And just, if that's what you want to do, we have it by the glass all day. Like, live it up. Have fun. I never understood that about vodka, too, if you were an owner. Because historically, some are premium priced, but premium price for vodka still isn't that expensive. It helps pay the bills. It's pretty affordable. You can do some things with it to help the bottom line.
I absolutely agree. And I'm going to tell you a funny story to your Camus story.
Sure.
Doug Frost, who is a master of wine, master somm, and a dear friend, and one of my most respected colleagues. I mean, because not only does he know wine, he knows spirits.
I've got bad news for you. He beat you to the show, but yes, I love Doug.
Okay. I do not feel bad about that, Andrew.
No,
because, but he this was years ago, he came out with an article about White Zinfandel. And it was so compelling. He said, to your point about sweet, I went on a journey. When I first discovered wine, I was, working at the Brass Rail, and it was jugs of Chablis, it was jugs, of Liefer Milch, and
the classics, yes.
When I first discovered White Zinfandel, it was, what was the brand? Anyway, but there was a cork in it. You had to use a wine screw. This is like early 1980s, and I went to the wine.
Probably Behringer, I'm guessing.
It could have been Behringer. Yeah. I went to the wine store, and I said, I see you're out of the 1980 Behringer White Zinfandel. Is the 1981 as good? The woman, I could see her biting her lip. But if we don't have that journey, if we don't have something to introduce us to, it's hard to get to white Burgundy. You can't just jump into white Burgundy. You can't just jump in, and it's been, like I said, that journey for me and the appreciation of it. I love rosé. I'm a huge rosé drinker in the summer, but it's about educating. And sweet, we don't have a palate. The reason I told you that Negroni story, we don't have a palate for bitter. We have to develop that. It has to come to us. We talk dry, but we drink sweet. Most people will lean towards sweet before they will drier.
I think I've heard you say that before, and I love that. I've used that. We talk dry, drink sweet.
Yes, that's it's so true. So, it's take people on that journey. I think the Cosmopolitan is one of the greatest balanced cocktails. I think it's complex. I think it brings, when it's made well.
Yes, done right.
When it's made well. And from there, like I said, if I have a guest ordering a Cosmopolitan, I'm going to make them the best Cosmopolitan I can. And as we develop a relationship, I'm like, have you ever tried a White Lady? Have you ever tried a Clover Club? And take them into gin. But you offer, it's like the martini. People come in, I'll have a martini. Do you have a preference in gins? Oh, no. I can't drink gin. There's no way I can drink gin. I want a Kettle One, or I want a Tito's, or I want an Absolute. Not truly a martini, but that's okay. If we're able to develop, and not to be, that's not a martini, what do you know? No. Let me develop a great relationship where now I can work you into an understanding of the whole category. And that's hospitality. That's hospitality.
Yeah. To be clear, I made that comment about sweetness. I think I should clarify. I'm not opposed to sweet. And I ended up marrying a Russian. Russians are famous for loving all things pastry, so I enjoy sweet things. Give me a tiramisu, it has no chance. What you were talking about there kind of reminds me of my issue with the sweetness. I usually will tell the bartender or server, I'm looking for something that's not sweet. Do you have any recommendations? And then that's when I get something that is a little on the sweet side. And so I think there's a propensity to go to your favorite drink without thinking about the wants or desires of the guest. And I think on the flip side of that, when you have someone who makes maybe perfect Cosmopolitan, the best to their ability, tries to honor the request of the guests, to win the confidence, to steer them to the Clover Cub. I feel like what's missing in a lot of my interactions has been that first step of winning the confidence. It's like, I asked for dry, you gave me sweet. I think I'm okay for the night, sort of thing. You kind of do have to see what they want before you steer the ship to the sweet drink. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and that, to me, is what builds that rapport with the guest, is that trust.
All right. I think this is a good point to interrupt. At this point, the dogs did start freaking out because someone came to mow Tony's yard. So I thought I would take a moment and say, if you have not had a chance to subscribe to the show, please do. All right, back to Tony and Andrew. I'm going to take that as a cue. We could say we're back. And so just so you know what happened, listeners, we had a visitor, an attacker, and the dogs very, very valiantly fought him off. And we are safe. No need to fear. The yard is mowed as well, so we're good. Yeah. So we were about to talk about Helen David Relief Fund.
Yes. Well, first of all, I mean, Helen was very philanthropic. From an early age, she instilled in me how important it was to give back. And, you know, she was on every board in Port Huron. She donated. There's a wing. When I was doing this film, we interviewed a woman who's turning 90 who knew Helen, who works for the hospital. And Helen made a nice donation to the hospital. And her job is really to manage the funds that Helen donated so they will continue into the future. And I didn't know this.
Well, that's cool.
It was cool, right? I mean, she always said, you know, it's better to give than to take. And Helen was a 2-time breast cancer survivor at a time when people didn't survive breast cancer. She used to joke, I mean, she lost her husband, tragic story, early age to a brain tumor. So when I became an adult, I would take her to a lot of events. And we would go out, to charity events or dinner events. And she said, is this a formal event? I said, yeah, it's going to be kind of fancy. I said, why? So, well, I was thinking about wearing this gown, and I can't decide, should I put the little ones in or the big ones? You know, she had a good sense of humor about the disease, but she was an advocate towards it. And when she passed in 2006, I said, you know, I want to do something in her memory that not only keeps her alive, because again, she did so much for this industry, and especially for women in this industry, and also to give back to those less fortunate who are going through cancer treatment. So in 2010, we started the Helen David Relief Fund, which benefits bartenders and their families going through cancer treatment. It goes 100% goes back into the bartending community. And it helps with all those incidental expenses, things like the mortgage, things like groceries, the electric bill, your kid needs new shoes, or whatever it is.
Yeah, because life doesn't stop when that happens. Keeps going.
Exactly. So we can't help with the medical bills per se. Hopefully, you know, you have insurance in place for that, but we can help with co-payments. We can help with, you know, a wig. We can help with all those things so that you can focus on recovery. So that's one less thing to worry about, because like you said, Andrew, life goes on. And it's part of the United States Bartenders Guild, which I am a very, very proud lifetime member. I, along with Francesco Lefconconi here in Las Vegas, opened the second chapter, and today there are over 60 chapters nationwide. And to date, we've helped over 100 families who are going through cancer treatment.
That's awesome. If someone's listening at home and thinks, I want to get involved, that sounds great. Where can they go to support you or help out?
Well, it is a function of the United States Bartenders Guild Charitable Foundation. If you go to the usbg.org, you can get more information on that. That being said, all you have to do is work in the bartending industry to apply for a grant. So if you're a bartender out there who is going through cancer treatment, you can apply. I mean, you don't have to be a member of the United States Bartenders Guild. Love, you know, for you to join the guild. I think it is the governing body to our profession in the United States, part of the IBA, the International Bartenders Association. But we're here to help bartenders. I like to say, Andrew, it's bartenders helping bartenders. And one of our big incentives is, must be a mailman now.
This is my most dangerous episode, probably.
Baby Thor. I've got 2 Chewinis over here, Thor and Zeus.
You have a Zeus too?
I have a Zeus, yes.
Yeah, Zeus is my dog.
Oh, right on.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a good name for a dog. Yeah.
But I would say one of our big incentives is Team Happiness, which was originally Team Negroni, sponsored by Campari. We've now, again, put it out there so that any spirit supplier, any non-alc can come on as a sponsor. So Team Happiness, that was Helen's toast. She would always wish all of her friends, family, and guests happiness. So
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So again, in her memory, we've named our bicycle team Team Happiness. Going into COVID, we were in 24 cities doing bike rides. And the great thing, Andrew, about team happiness and bartenders getting on bikes is that you're out there riding to bring awareness and raise funds for those less fortunate. But you know as well as I do, bartending is a strenuous career. I mean, you're behind the bar, you're on your feet, 8, 10, 12-hour shifts. Getting on a bicycle, best thing ever happened to me. You get out, you ride 10, 15, 20 miles, you clear your head, your heart gets pumping, fresh air, vitamin D from the sun. So you're taking better care of yourself while helping someone else.
Yeah, no, they kind of lock us behind a wooden box for 10 hours. You soak yourself in cortisol, you stay up till 4 a.m., wake up at noon, eat a cheeseburger, and then you go right back to it. That was my 20s. So yeah, bike ride would help. What's it going to take to get a bike ride in Omaha? I think that should happen.
I think it definitely should happen. It takes a hero like you to organize it.
Okay.
The USBG, we have it's a turnkey thing. We can provide you with all the information it takes to host a ride. We started off doing rides in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We've now expanded to host rides throughout the year. I was just in Arizona this month. Ignite just hosted a great ride in Scottsdale. Raised a lot of money. I donated a Making Great Cocktails at Home seminar that raised $5,000. And again, all those dollars are tax deductible and they go right back into the bartending community. So love to do a ride in your
We'll figure something out. We already do a fundraiser every October, so I think it might be a fun way to kick off the month for us. So we'll talk. We'll see what we can do.
I'm keeping October pretty wide open for bike rides.
Awesome.
We have end of October. We have a big ride here in Nevada. It's usually the biggest ride in Las Vegas. We get about 40 or 50 bartenders, bar enthusiasts, bar supporters, bar customers, bicycle riders, that come out and support the ride. It's just, like I said, we were just in Scottsdale. Next month, we'll be in Galveston with the Landry's group. Landry's has been a huge supporter. So we're doing our second Galveston ride with Landry's for the USBG, the Helen David Relief Fund. We've done Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Arizona. We've done Reno. It's a great way to bring the community together and help our brothers and sisters who unfortunately are stricken with this terrible disease.
Help the people that can't help themselves at the moment too. Awesome. Well, yeah, let's I'm serious. Let's get something on the books. I think it'd be awesome. And Omaha's the kind of place I think we'd have a pretty good showing. So it's definitely
or a lot of hills.
So it's not. So here's the thing. I got it in my head that I was going to run a marathon a couple years ago, and I ended up doing it. And it's not flat, but if I could run a marathon, you should be able to bike. I think it's flat enough. Yeah, that's why I'm going with that. Yeah.
Andrew, I'm never the first one across the finish line, and it's not a race. It's a fun ride, but I always finish.
Oh yeah. No, they had a 6-hour time limit, and I took them for their word. No. I was like 4 and change, I think. So I mean, it wasn't terrible, but whatever. I used to be a smoker, and I quit right after COVID. It was actually COVID that helped me quit. Having to wear a mask every day. I could smell that smoke. Like, it didn't matter what I did. I could always smell just residual smoke. And so I was like, I have to quit, But then I was like, well, I've smoked for so many years. I should go the other direction. So, yeah.
It's so funny you say that because when we opened when I started the Brass Rail, it had been open. I mean, in 1980, everybody smoked. I didn't smoke at the time. And there were these 2 big smoke eaters in there, which are now gone, to try to clear out some of the smoke. But I would go home and I reeked of smoke. I felt like I smoked 2 packs. And then eventually I did smoke. And I'll be honest with you, I love smoking. It was, I love the ritual of it. I love the break that you had. I'm blessed today that, it's been over 10 years since I've had a cigarette, but I get it. I understand, smoking. I know it's terrible for you, but there was something about it. But I can't imagine today walking into the Brass Rail,
seeing everyone smoke.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we've pulled out those smoke eaters. We pulled out the drop ceiling. There's 100-year-old tin ceiling up above that we're going to try to restore. I'm so excited for the next generation of the brass rail and what we're going to be able to do. Helen would always do Tom and Jerry's. Do you know the Tom and Jerry?
Yeah, classic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody makes anymore. Back when Helen was a kid, she used to, work in Detroit. This would have been just after Prohibition, 34, 35, 36. And she would go out and with her girlfriends, and every bar would have Tom and Jerry's. So you would warm up in the winter from not only the temperature of the drink, but also the fortification of the drink. So when she opened the bar in 37, she said, I'm selling Tom and Jerry's. And she started making them in 1937. It's kind of like the Bloody Mary at Harry's or the Irish coffee at the Buena Vista. It is ground zero for Tom and Jerry's in the United States. And we were open for Tom and Jerry's season this year, and the community came out and they were so excited it was back, and Helen's original recipe. So it's one of, again, those classic traditions that she was doing she did 70 years and continued, with my Uncle Charlie and my cousin Maroon. So you have to come in during the holidays for a Tom and Jerry.
Get a Tom and Jerry, yeah. No, I only made it one time in one bar. It's been long enough that it's lost to the sands of time. It was Chris Milligan, actually. It's Secreto.
Oh, yeah.
And he also was the one that had the cable car on the menu. And so, yeah, when I was just a young budding bartender, I had to learn your name and tell guests about it before I knew you or anything. Just like, oh, there's this guy named Tony, and he made this drink. It was like about where I knew. I was like 19 or something. But yeah, fun times.
We talked about that a little bit earlier. This really is a hand down to the next generation, and to be able to tell those stories and be able to continue legacies and build your own. Because I have a lot of young bartenders, Andrew, that come up to me and they say, so what does it take to become a great bartender? And I always answer with, work with and learn from great bartenders. I believe that the bartender that I've become today is a collection of all the great people that I've worked with over those 46 years. And I've taken little things. I remember Jack Slick one day at the Balboa. I made a tray full of Irish coffees, and it was a busy Sunday brunch. And he came over, and I was just about to send him out, and he dumped them all out. And I was like, Jack, what the hell are you doing? I'm busy. He's like, you over whipped the cream. Now, it was kind of a dick way to get that point across.
But you learned.
I've forgotten. So I instill on people not to over whip the cream. And it's a little thing, but I believe that great drinks are in the details. That little detail makes a difference. People might not notice it, but they notice the fact that they had a great Irish coffee.
I mean, that's a great point, too. Like, I had a really, really lucky streak when I started. I had the Chris Milligan and his sidekick, Todd Walker, at that bar. I randomly ran into Natalie Bovis and then just worked with her a ton. And who knew? Like, years later, I'm still like, wow, you knew everyone. You did a really good job at telling me what to do and not to do. I appreciate that. What you were saying earlier about learn something every day, too, I feel like it applies here. And I was thinking, I've never ever been upset that I've learned something or grown in some way. It's like every time I learn something, it's just another like arrow in my quiver where I can do a little bit more damage or make a little more impact with every guest that's in front of me. So it really does add up.
It absolutely does. When we opened Bellagio in 1998, I wanted to resurrect the classic drinks and let people know the stories and histories behind them. And bartenders at that time had no idea. And I said, not everyone's going to want to know the story of the 1944 Mai Tai. But if you know it and you're able to share that and explain to them why it's not orange juice and pineapple juice and grenadine,
whatever the atrocities you've thrown in there,
which was the Mai Tai people knew in Las Vegas at the time, that you can tell that story and you know why you're serving the drink you're serving and get people to try it. As Charlotte would say, through greater knowledge comes deeper enjoyment. And that was all part of the journey. And I'm sure that they've gone on and told that story many, many, many times.
Well, Tony, I've got to say you are a master bartender. The first guest to have the honor of actually making a drink on the show, which means you must know what you're doing. If someone was listening and heard the clinking of the ice earlier and they wanted to know where they could find out more about you, follow you, see what you're doing, where could someone find you on the interwebs?
ModernMixologist.com is my website. MDRN Mixologist is my handle at Instagram. And I'll be honest with you, Andrew, that my assistant Andrea handles most of those Facebook and Instagram posts. But if you want to just shoot me a text or hit me up on my website, I don't do it overnight, but I will get back to everyone.
That's true.
As you know.
Yes, you're a busy guy. You're riding your bike all over the place. You got a lot to do.
I'm riding my bike. I'm working with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines.
Yeah.
I make drinks for the Golden Knights up in Seattle. I was just down at Intuit Dome for the NBA All-Star Game. I do drinks down there. I never in my wildest dreams, when people asked me in 1980, so what do you do for a profession? What is your job? I said, I'm a bartender. I'd get all excited. The next question would always be, so what do you want to do for a profession? Because bartending was not looked upon as a career. And I'm so blessed that I didn't listen to them. I followed my heart. I never thought it would take me to the place it's taken me. But when you do what you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I've never been rich, Andrew, but I've lived richly.
Yeah. And the good thing about bartending is, even if you're not rich, if you work a shift, you got to leave with some money. So, yeah, you got a little bit of something.
I've never been broke either. So
that's true. Yes. It's if you hold on to the money to the next day, you usually have a pretty good shot,
Yes.
As long as you don't go spend it that night. Yeah.
No, I've made a very nice living, a good livelihood. I've traveled the world. I've never in my wildest dreams would I thought I would visit the places I visit as a bartender. I mentioned Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. I worked with Crystal Cruise Line. I saw the world. I wrote 2 books. I've competed with USBG in Spain, in Italy, in Germany. I mean, all as a bartender.
Yeah.
Things I probably never would have gotten to experience had I sold insurance. Not that there's anything wrong with selling insurance, but
True. Yeah.
Never been rich, but I have lived richly.
I love that. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm serious about we should get something together with Omaha. I think that maybe we should even film in person here, because I'm thinking we didn't even talk about your books, really. We didn't really talk about competitions. I could talk to you all day. Yeah. We'll have to see if we can touch base. Good luck on your opening. I know that's coming soon, so that's exciting.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure talking about our profession, our mutual love for the craft. And thank you for all you're doing. As Helen would say, happiness.
To happiness. Cheers.
That's the show, my friends. Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. If you have not checked it out, go to servesyouRightPod.com to see what we're up to, see old episodes, and so much more. All right, I'll see you next time.